staffs and students of Assam Memorial College for the webinar Myths and Facts of Novel Corona. Once again, I welcome you all.
Privilege. With great privilege, I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Naveen Kumar, founder and director of Immunogenics Bioscience, with an aim of simplifying diagnosis in terms of cost and technology. Medical microbiologist having more than 60 years of experience in molecular microbiology and bioinformatics. Worked as senior scientist from a bioincubation center, a scientist at Hellbox Center, Department of Medical Microbiology, Lower Saxony, Germany. Such expertise in PCR, development, DNA sequencing, etc. We are happy to have waiting to listen to your views and COVID-19. This is
Hello.
Sir, now you can start.
Yeah, some echo is coming, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, and now shall we start?
Yeah, still echo is there, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
You're not audible, sir.
No, we didn't start it.
Okay.
The voice is clear.
Voice is clear, but still louder.
Yeah, I can talk louder.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, shall we start then?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, very good morning to everyone joining the meeting. At the outset, I would like to thank Asan Memorial College for inviting me to give a talk on the current pandemic on COVID-19. So, and also I would like to thank Dr. Ashiba, the head of the Department of Biochemistry, for inviting me to give the talk. So, in the next few minutes, I will be just going through some of the interesting facts on COVID-19 and how it is originated and what are the symptoms and there are many researches going on and the treatment, vaccine strategies, and so on. And also, there's a lot of myth and facts about coronaviruses, and so I will be at the end will be clarifying all the myths, and I'll be clarifying the what is the real facts about it. So I couldn't move the slides. I don't know why.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I couldn't move the once again. I couldn't be able to move my slides. Okay, I could. Okay.
Yeah.
So just like to tell about everybody aware that the new virus is called SARS-CoV-2 or novel coronavirus, and which is closely related to SARS viruses, which is was before we seen. And the disease caused is called COVID-19. This is like coronavirus infectious disease 9 because 2019, so it is called as COVID-19. And as we know that everybody aware that it is possibly would have been originated from the Wuhan, and then from China it is spread to many other countries. So now the whole world is like struggling because of coronavirus. And there is something called zero patient, like in Hunan seafood market in Hubei's province. They found out like this is a lady who were the first patient who was infected because of coronavirus. I think somebody mic is on. Please mute your mic. So, like, if you look at the global scenario, uh, so I think I'm getting echo from other mic. Is anybody on the mic? Okay, thank you. So, if you look at the no, so please, please off your mic so that it will be easy. So there will be a mic button in the down. So please mute it. So if you look at the global scenario, like mm, so still I can like describe it, like if you look at the global scenario, there are like 3 million people are infected. Uh, Ma'am, like you see, like somebody mic is on, or you can generally mute all the mics from the administrator side. Hello, I think now clear. Okay. Hello. Yeah. So globally, globally, if you look at global scenario of coronavirus, like throughout the world, as on March 30th, I mean April 30th, if you see, like 3 million people were infected and more than 2.18 lakh people have lost their life because of coronavirus. And if you look at the real graphs, it keep going high, and the mortality is 14% compared to other viruses. It is little less, but still it's a worrisome because of the super spreading nature. And this is the report as on yesterday. Like US is still top on the list, as well as the cases as well as the death. And India is around 18th on the table, and it's slowly moving up with the cases. And so the coronavirus is not the one which took a lot of lives and infected many people. In the past, we had something called Spanish flu. Many of may have heard that. In 1918, it's called flu pandemic. So they were like 500 million people were infected. Almost more than 5 million people lost their life because of the Spanish flu. And if you look at the origin, like coronavirus, it's mainly considered to be bats, especially the horseshoe bats, and they are like known to be a reservoir for many viruses, not only for I mean the SARS-CoV-2. And if you look at the past epidemic and pandemics, we have very good histories of many other viruses which are much more dangerous than the SARS-CoV-2. If you look at the Marburg viruses, again it's by bat and Ebola bat. So if you look at the table, it will clearly tell you like how many people were infected and how many people were dead and what is the fatality rate. On the whole, like the Marburg ranks the first and with the 81% morbidity, I mean mortality, and Ebola, Nipah, and SARS, and bird flu. So most of these viruses are like from animals. And we had a MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome virus, and bird flu. And then again, US and Mexico, because of H1N1, lost many lives, and seasonal flu. Currently, we are in 2019 novel coronavirus, that is SARS-CoV-2, and the current fatality rate as on yesterday is 14%. And if you look at like how these viruses are evolved from animals, so not only SARS-CoV, SARS-CoV-2. There are other viruses like rabies, Ebola, dengue, and HIV. Like from monkey, it is called simian viruses, which has been transmitted to human. So if you look at like how they evolve, so so if you imagine that this is a sequence in the bottom, like ATG and CAG, and when they try to jump from animals to human, they tend to adapt the new environment, so they tend to get mutated. So, like say for example, ATG to CTG, so it is converted to CTG now, and so here it is from monkey to animal, and hello, okay. So when the next stage, when they go, they again get mutated and still. And so here, like there will be animal from animal to human, and human to human will be more, and again they tend to get mutated, and finally they end up in human transmission. So they stabilize themselves within the human. So then it spreads between the human and human, like how the SARS-CoV-2 happening. So this is merely because of the adaptation, how human evolved. These viruses all keep evolving from animals to humans and between the human and human. So to make them more stable, they make themselves adaptable to the suited environment by mutating them some of the sequences which is essential for to interact with the human. So moving on to the structure of a novel coronavirus, the name comes from because of the spike protein. They looks like shape of the sun, so it got the name of corona from that. So they contain mainly a spike protein, which is a main protein which binds to the human ACE2 receptors in the lungs as well as the intestine. And there are envelope proteins, then nucleocapsid, and then membrane proteins. These are structural proteins, and then there are many non-structural proteins. This is a nucleocapsid which holds the RNA tightly within the viruses. So they are usually a positive single stranded RNA. They can even act as a directly mRNA. So they are non-segmented. Usually these viruses are enveloped. Their size to 200 nanometer size. And if you look at the genome size, they are like around 30 kb in size. So the main difference of this virus when compared to the previous SARS CoV virus is there are some mutation in the viruses in a few regions, and mainly if you look at the ORF, that is open reading frame 8, they have lost around 382 nucleotides, so that makes them something different from SARS-CoV-2. So many of you are aware that viruses are very microscopic, and they are like nanometers in size. You can't even see with the normal microscope. You need an electron microscope, and if you consider as such a virus, they are like just particles. They don't have any life. They need some host to replicate. And this is just to show you the relative size, how virus small it is. Like if you look at the viruses, they are like around a few nanometers to 100 nanometers maximum. They can be only visible under like electron microscope, a specialized microscope, to visualize the very tiny objects. And the lower table shows how the genome size can vary. So if you look at the human genome, there are like 3.2 billion base pairs are the human genome. Whereas when you compare to the virus, the current SARS-CoV has only 30,000 base pairs. So it is dramatically small, but still doing many things in human. So how we as a family, the coronavirus also as a family, like just to show you how this is it's a nidovirus. A nido means nested. I'll come to that later. And under that, coronaviridae, and then coronavirinae subfamily. And then there are genus called alpha coronavirus, beta coronavirus, gamma, and delta. This is basically based on the genome. They classify it. And if you look at the coronavirus, there are known six coronavirus previously, and out of that, two are like very dangerous previously, SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV. These were like caused serious infections in human previous history. The others are like normally doesn't cause any harmness because they're common cold or some common enteric diarrheal disease or something like that. And the current one is a novel coronavirus. This is causing a very serious pandemic as such today. So this is belongs to Sarbico virus because this is most similar to SARS-CoV virus. That's why it's called as SARS beta coronavirus. It's a subgenus belong to it, and there are many other subgenus like MARBICO virus, which is MERS-BICO virus because of MERS belong to MERS. And moving on to the natural reservoirs of coronavirus group, there are many, like mainly bats acts as reservoirs, and they tend to jump to an intermediate host, like in case of civet, SARS-CoV viruses, and camel in case of MERS-CoV. And it is believed to be pangolins, and there are some studies proves that a pangolin could be possible intermediate host for SARS-CoV-2. I'll come to that in few minutes. So to say that bats act as a main reservoir, from that it goes to an intermediate host, then they mutate somehow, and then it goes to the next host. There now we are a human as a next host for the SARS-CoV-2. And these are the horseshoe bats, which are mainly causes the SARS-CoV-2. Not all normal bats can cause SARS-CoV-2. Only there are specific bats which can harbor these viruses. So, as I said, like there are three coronaviruses: the MERS-CoV, SARS-CoV, and the current novel coronavirus are the most dangerous ones, which are causing many disease. And they are believed to be intermediate roads, the CV cats and camel for MERS-CoV. And current one is pangolins, and so there are some segments which matching with the pangolin coronaviruses. So this phylogenetic tree, just to show you that how closely they are related to pangolins and bats. And if you look at the green color sequences are from the whole genome sequence of coronaviruses from pangolins, and then the blue color ones are like the current coronaviruses isolated from the human from China and other places, USA and other places, and the red colors are from the bat origin from Hunan markets. So this clearly shows that they're forming a new cluster circulating from SARS coronavirus. So that proves that they are closely related to SARS coronavirus, not to other existing human coronavirus, and more similar to pangolins and bats. Again, this is a phylogenetic tree to show how they closely related to bats and pangolins. And this is very interesting. If you look at this phylogenetic tree, the red color ones here are novel coronavirus sequences from human, and the below one is bat SLV SARS-CoV viruses from isolated from bats, and some of the pangolin sequences. So they are like SARS-CoV viruses and divided into three clades. They are forming a separate cluster, but into different three clades. One has bats, and other one with pangolins and bats and SARS coronaviruses. And this study from Anderson et al., the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2, clearly shows that the most similar ones are the RATG13 and pangolins. If you look at the receptor binding domain, actually before going into the receptor binding domain, I'll let you know, like the main receptor on these viruses are spike protein, which interact with the AC2 receptors on human lung cells, type 2 cells. And mainly these has two subunit, S1 subunit and S2 subunit. The moment they enter into the host cells, they will be cleaved by the host enzymes, and then they adhere to the AC2 receptors. So there are specific domains on these proteins which has the high affinity and binding to the AC2 receptors. And if you look at the blue color boxes, the LLL and FFF and QSN, these are the amino acid residues mainly which interact with the AC2 receptors in human. So by looking at this analysis of amino acid alignment, we could see that the SARS-CoV-2 has much more homology to pangolin spike protein rather than the bat viruses. And also they have a unique polybasic cleavage site at the spike protein, which normally not reported. Okay, some noise coming. Okay, so there are like uh, no other polybasic sites shown before the SARS-CoV-2. So this is to much more to prove that it's like a kind of mixing from pangolins and bat viruses. If you look at the first one, the SARS-CoV-2 has much more similarity to bat viruses by looking at the different gene markers, and also pangolin coronaviruses. But mainly, if you look at the receptor binding domain of spike protein, rather than the bats, they are much more similar to pangolins. And also, they have a specific, mutation or the evolution made them to have specific polybasic sites for the cleavage from the host protease enzymes. So they have a pangolin have 91% similarity to the current SARS-CoV-2. So if you look at the generally like this line says that you consider this as a whole genome of SARS-CoV and BAT-CoV and pangolin. So the SARS-CoV and BAT-CoV are whole genome wise they are higher similar. But if you look at the spike protein, the highlighted red colors, green colors, the spike proteins are much more similar to pangolins rather than the bat coronavirus. So what the many studies says that it could be a chimera. The coronavirus are known to undergo recombination. So some of the studies proves that it could be a chimera of both the bat coronavirus and the pangolin coronavirus. It could have happened in any one of the host. So either from the bat coronavirus come into contact with the pangolin, then they might have got recombinated in the pangolin, and then it could have transmitted to human or the vice versa. So again, this shows the spike protein has much similar to pangolins and bat coronaviruses. And if you, this is just to show you like some of the students how these viruses are classified by using a Baltimore mechanism, like based on the replication mechanism, he has classified into 6 groups. This is just simply to put in like how when a virus enter into a host, what is the mode of mRNA conversion. Based on that, Baltimore is classified into 6 different groups. Say for example, we will take the example of the current SARS coronavirus 2 or novel coronavirus. The positive sense RNA is converted to negative sense RNA, and then they'll be replicating keep. At the same time, the positive sense RNA keep producing proteins directly. So like this, how from a virus, the mRNA is produced. The central point is mRNA. Based on that, Baltimore is classified into 6 different groups. So the current SARS coronavirus has a positive sense single-stranded RNA. And just to show you the genome structure, how this genome, so it's very simple. They are not quite big. So they have almost around 30,000 base pair sequences. They start from 5 prime and to 3 prime. 5 prime has some UTR regions, and 3 prime also has a UTR region. And if you start from the ORF 1A and 1B, These are like some genes coding from these sites, which is essential for the replication and other purposes. These all are non-structural proteins. And if you look at the main structural protein, spike protein, envelope protein, and M membrane, and then the nucleocapsid protein. So the below one is just to show the comparison of genome from different coronaviruses. They almost all of them are unique and in the arrangement, but there are like minor variations between them during the adaptation or evolution, and with the minor mutations also. So moving on to the what the genome does. So mainly they codes for 16 non-structural proteins, which mainly involve in the replication and then the protein cleavage and so on. And apart from 16 non-structural proteins, there are like many essential structural proteins like and spike protein and um, nucleocapsid, envelope protein, and other proteins are very essential. And mainly the RNA dependent RNA polymerase and protease are very important in the process of viral replication. Moving on to the receptor, the main receptors of the SARS-CoV-2, the spike protein is a very essential one, and they mainly attach to the AC2 receptors. This is the same receptor for SARS coronaviruses too. So this is the same AC2 receptor for the previous virus as well. And there is a specific enzyme, protease, cellular proteases, which cleave them into S1 and S2. Then they make them to adhere to the receptors. And so this is exactly a mechanism of how like a specific key only will be suitable for a lock. Similarly, the receptor is the same. So these receptors can only bind to the AC2 receptors, not to the other receptors. So far understood from the research. So there will be specific binding and not a weak binding. And if you look at the key and lock, not all the keys will set into that. So in that case, SARS-CoV-2 specifically bind to the AC2 receptors. And if you look at the SARS-CoV neutralization effect from the antisera, they are proven that SARS-CoV has a high neutralization, but so far from the study, it shows very moderate neutralization effect by the convalescent sera of spike protein. So, so far from the research, like till the 30th of April, like there are like many mutation happened in spike protein, and we yet to know what are the sequences of it. Like maybe some faster spreading or faster entry into the cells. There's so many things could be, but there are like need to be done in detail. So these are the variations. If you see in US, there is from 30 sequences from valine to alanine at 480 sequence. So if you look at the replication, the SARS-CoV-2 enter to the AC2 receptor once goes into the cells, and the mRNA directly, because there is positive sense RNA, right? So they will be directly converted into proteins once they enter into the cell, and the RNA dependent RNA polymerase will be expressed. They'll keep replicating, and all the proteins will be expressed. And then they go into the rough endoplasmic reticulum. All the proteins will be produced, and then go to Golgi complex, mature enough, and then bud out of the cells and go and infect the next cells. It's very simple. Just enter the cells and produce the protein required for them, and then pack inside the vesicle, and then they release off. So the very important stuff here is when they enter into the cell, they produce a lot of something called as subgenomic RNA. So there are like genomic RNA as well as subgenomic RNA. So I'll tell you what it is. So so this is the structure. The top one is the genomic structure, where as I said, like ORF1 and ORF1b and spike proteins. Here there are a few important thing is that so the ORF1a and 1b, if you remove ORF1a from SARS-CoV, the 1b cannot express, because the origin, I mean the starting site is from the ORF1a. So if you remove ORF1b, ORF1a can be expressed. So which means that there is a ribosomal shift frame shift happen when they transcribe this ORF1b. So ORF1b contain mainly the RDRP, which is required for the protein, the mRNA synthesis, like a replication. So when it is produced as a polyprotein, this polyprotein will be cleaved by the, as I said, enzymes, proteases, the PL and CL proteases, the pepin-like, and so they cleave at specific cleavage site in the polyprotein, and then these proteins will become an active protein. So before that, this polyprotein will be inactive. Once these proteases cleaves them, they will become small proteins, and then they will be active and involved in the replication mechanism and other mechanism. And this frame shift is one single frame shift is very essential for the RDRP to be synthesized. And apart from this, there is something called subgenomic mRNA. So which means that there are many pieces, small pieces of mRNA from the genomic mRNA. This is the exclusive phenomenon of the coronavirus family. Now all the coronavirus. That's why the name I said, like a nido means nested. So which means that there will be many 3 prime poly A as well as the 5 prime leader sequences. So from the genome, the leader sequences will be copied, and also something called TRS, transcription regulatory sequences, will be there on the upstream, that is 5 prime genome. So how this subgenomic RNA is produced is by the mechanism of premature termination, mainly in coronavirus, and also by discontinuous transcription mechanism. So when they start producing the genes, they start from the 3 prime region, transcribing it, and then suddenly they jump to the 5 prime leader sequence and attach the leader sequence. So by this mechanism, they produce a lot of subgenomic mRNA, and by using the subgenomic mRNA, each of them will be expressed. But at the end of the day, when they packing together to bud out of the cell, only the genomic RNA will be packed into the cell, not the other subgenomic RNA. So when they started in the beginning, there were like 3 types of SARS-CoV-2 as emerging, but now as of now, like there are like last week it was 8 strains of coronavirus spreading across the globe, but as of yesterday it was like 10, and the A2A was the most predominant one, which is causing the disease throughout the world. But this is just to show that how enormously scientists working on genome sequencing throughout the world. So far, like till yesterday, there were like more than 15,000 whole genome sequence data is available in the GSAID or next ones. So based on that, they will be forming 3 different clades: S clade and G clade and V clade, and majority of them goes to G clades, which is most predominant in Europe and US. And how this coronavirus spreads, this is very essential because many people think that there are a very different way of spreading, like, but mainly this spreads as a droplets. So when somebody who has already infected by coronavirus, when they talk or sneeze, these air droplets, the droplets spread in the airs, and these are tend to be there in for air for some time, and also they can spread much faster. The speed of these, when somebody sneeze, they may be like 10 to 100 meters per hour, so something like that. So they can, such a speed they can go. So when somebody is near in a particular specified distance, say, that's why they say like you should be away from 2 meters or 6 meters, something like that, 2 feet or 6 feet something. So when somebody is near to infected persons, the air droplet goes to them, and then they get infected, and again they tend to get spread to others. So if you look at the main target area of coronaviruses, basically there are 2 area which is infected by SARS coronavirus 2, which is the throat as well as the windpipe, the lungs as well as the windpipes. So first it will once enter into that, it will cause an infection in the throat, and then later it moves to the lung and then causes serious infections like pneumonia. So these are the 2 areas which is commonly exposed to your environment. So somebody who's infected, they can easily spread the viruses to the environment again back. So this is just to show some video. Maybe I can play this. This is SARS coronavirus with the spikes and other things, and with the spike it named SARS coronaviruses. So they causes a disease called COVID-19. Somebody is infected, so it mainly causes throat and lung infection. So what happens when your body get coronaviruses, and what exactly causes pneumonia? So how vaccine could work on that? So if you look at the viruses, they are essentially need a live cells for them to replicate. And once they come into the human cells, first we look at the structure of it. It's a viral genetic material, the violet colors, and then by a protein coat, and then by the yellow color, which is the lipid coat, which is essentially help them into fuse with the human cells. And on top of that, you will have a spike proteins, E gene, and then the M. So basically, once they enter into the cell, these spike proteins are essential for them to interact with your cells, that is lung cells, through ACE2 receptors. So if somebody sneezes, the air droplets comes out with which carries a lot of viral load in them, and then somebody in a closer contact, they can inhale those viruses. Once it goes inside, they first go to the throat, and then they bind to the specific receptors on the throat. So once they have a firm attachment to the receptor, there will be endocytus.
Excuse
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
sir.
yes, ma'am.
Sir,
Yes,
screen
ma'am.
is not visible, sir. Screen is not visible.
Oh, screen is not visible.
Videos. Yeah, yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, previously it was visible, right?
Yeah, yeah, only for a few minutes.
So now,
No,
now it is visible.
yes. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes.
Now
Yes,
it's visible,
yes.
sir.
Yes.
Now
Yes,
it is
sir.
visible. Okay, okay, fine.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, okay, okay. So in this, like, I'll be explaining how SARS-CoV causes infection. This is a coronavirus spike protein, and these are the spikes. And the disease caused is the COVID-19. And somebody, when they have infection, the mainly throat and lung is mainly infected. And so we'll be looking at what happened when the coronavirus comes in your body, and what causes pneumonia, and finally what will be the effect of vaccine, how it works inside the human. So these viruses essentially need a live cell to replicate. If you look at the virus as such, they carry a genetic material, which is positive sense single stranded RNA, and they have a viral protein shell which protects them from not damaging the nucleic acids. And then the yellow color is the lipid layers, which is mainly help them to attach to the host cells for fusion. And then the spike proteins. So these are the blue colors are spike proteins, and the red ones are E proteins, and some of them are membrane, and other proteins also on the surfaces. So when somebody sneeze, these carries a lot of virus on the hair droplets. So when somebody in a near vicinity, they can get these air droplets, and then it attached to the receptors on the surface. So once they have firm attachments to the receptors, then there will be endocytosis. So they go inside the cells, fuse to the cells, and release their genetic material. So now the viruses will be slowly releasing the genetic material inside, and now all the viruses, I mean the genetic material has gone inside. One important thing here is they doesn't need to go to the nucleus. They simply can produce a protein at the because of the ribosome, because they are positive sense RNA. They directly can go into the cytoplasm, rough endoplasmic reticulum. They can directly straight away can produce the proteins, and then they can mature through Golgi apparatus, and then all the spike proteins come to the surface, and then the virus bud out, of the cells, already infected cells, and move out, and now it is ready to infect the next cell, right? So this is how it infects. And when these kind of mechanism happens, how they cause pneumonia. So as we know that lungs have different segments. You have trachea and bronchi, the branches, and then final terminal branches called bronchiole, and end of them they will have a air sac called alveoli sacs. So these alveoli sacs are very essential because when they inflate and shrink back, they supply a lot of oxygen and eliminate the carbon dioxide out. So this is a kind of a balloon, like, so they keep pumping, so they shift. So when these alveoli, so they send the oxygen to our blood and send out the carbon dioxide to the environment. That's how we do the respiration. So when these viruses affects, these viruses mainly blocks our all the essential windpipes and damage the cilia and so on. So when this happens, there is a lot of immune mechanism takes place. So for example, this is a macrophage which engulfs them, and then once they engulf, they get sensitized by the antigen and then sent to produce a lot of cytokines. So with these cytokines releases happens, they tend to recruit these other immune cells to the surfaces. If your immune cells are overacting too much, then what happens? There will be a fluid accumulation in the ALSAC, and which may lead to the damage to the lungs, which called lobar pneumonia, and then finally you may end up in bronchopneumonia. So that's how patients may develop the difficulty in breathing, chest pain, and coughing, fever, chills, confusion, headache, muscle pain, fatigueness. And if somebody is not able to withstand those things, they may be put into the ventilation system, the artificial oxygen supply, because they can't able to breathe. They'll be put into the ventilation system, and then they will be, with the help of the machines, they will be able to supply the oxygen. So basically, this pathomechanism also depends on ethnicity, age, and many factors. If you have any comorbid conditions, that also main factors for the thing. So that's how, like, the world is searching for the vaccine for it, and if the vaccine comes out, it will be really good for the human being. The current moment, the scenario is going very worse, and people throughout the world are searching for the virus candidate, I mean vaccine candidate. Soon we'll be getting the very good candidate, because many of them are in clinical trials. So basically, what is vaccine is, maybe I have some couple of slides below how what vaccine is, but still, like, vaccine is nothing but defective viruses or a protein of viruses which can injected into the human, and they produce antibody against them, because since it is a foreign, these antibodies goes and binds to the real infective virus when when come into the contact with the human. So when these antibody blocks the binding receptors, they no more can bind to the receptors of the human cells. So your immune cell will act faster and then engulf them, and then completely eliminate them from body. That's how these virus vaccines help us in eliminating the viruses without getting infected. So many people thinks that it spreads through air, right? But it's not so. It's a myth, actually. So it doesn't spread, because whatever the air we normally inhale, it's a pure air. The only problem is somebody near to you, if you have an infection, if they sneeze or cough, or these droplets can travel for some meters, and then that air can cause a disease, because the speed of the air droplet can increase or decrease based on the air direction as well as the air speed. So if you imagine that if I have a handful of sand, if I just throw it, the larger particle will settle down faster, but the finer particle will tend to move a little longer distance when in the direction of air. The same mechanism happens here. So don't believe that it is not spread through air. It just spread through air by the infected droplets, right? Nothing through air. So the air act as a medium for them to carry. So that's why we wear masks, because masks act as a sieving mechanism. They can simply filter out the viruses, like how we use some of the things in our home day-to-day life for sieving some of the floors and other things. So they have a different sizes because you need to filter out some of them, right? So in case of mask, there are two masks. One is like the normal surgical mask we use and the respirator. If you look at this green color in the bottom, these green colors are our air size, and the air size, and the surgical mask pore size is the 2 to 10 micron, which means that it can literally allow the viruses, but it can limit the speed of the air droplets coming out, right? So that's why we wear the mask. And N95 0.3 micron. Still, at some stages, these also can release the viruses, but still it gives you the protection from getting infected. So moving on to the super spreader. So why it is called a super spreader is that because of the tendency of spreading much faster to the community. Because the SARS took 130 days to spread 1,000 people, whereas MERS took longer days, around 900 days to infect 1,000 people. But whereas the new SARS-CoV-2 just took 48 days to infect 1,000 people in the community. So that's why it is called as a super spreader, because if you look at the left side, the red dots are infected ones. Once it's communicate with the 2%, that's chance that it can spread a 1%. And again, when they go, they can spread to the entire community. So that is the super spreading nature of the viruses. And as per the Pareto principle, like the super spreading these viruses can spread just like that in a super spread manner. So if 20% of the population is infected, they can infect the 80% of the remaining population easily by the super spreading nature. And if you look at the incubation period, they are like 1 to 14 days. It varies between the individual because of their immunity, ethnicity, genetic makeup, HLA, so many factors. Uh, Based on that, somebody can show symptoms within 2 days, somebody can show in 4 days, 5 days. So it maximum can go to 14 days and even beyond that, because the study so far proven is 14 days. So generally, you have a lot of symptoms. The main thing is fever, tiredness, cough, a kind of dry cough, and you will not usually have a running nose, and you will have a body ache. And now WHO is coming up with some other symptoms also, because we are not yet sure that what are the other symptoms which is usually reported, because the world is yet studying so many factors. So even a few days back, WHO said even chills and shivering also can happen in some patients. So there are some other thing, and finally can lead to pneumonia. And one of the main problem in these thing is cytokine storm. This happens in a few patients where the immune system trigger too much, and they produce a lot of chemicals which can act on your body and cause damage to your body. So this is just to put it in a very simple form, how we communicate through our language. Cell communicate through something called a cytokine. Cyto means a cell produce, cyto means cell, right? Kine means chemical. So a cell produce a chemical which can interact with the cell and cell. They communicate. Say for example, macrophage secretes some IL-1 or IL-6. Then they go and bind to the B cells. They say, "Hey, come on! Like somebody has come to our body, so we need to attack." So they tend to go to that place, like the immune cell get trafficked, and then inflammation happens, and this inflammation releases again a lot of cytokines. These cytokines act on the human cells, and they cause fever, damage to the different organs, then lead to organ failure, and then rashes, and sometimes even lead to the low cell counts. So there are some IL-1, IL-6, 18, tumor necrosis factor, alpha and beta. So there are the cytokine storm is the main problem. So in some of the patients, they try to give some of the supportive therapy to reduce the cytokine storm. And commonly, these share some of the commonality between the other flus and common colds. You can see these from the table: fever, fatigue, cough, sneezing, So what I'm coming to say here is really you cannot able to differentiate between the common cold and COVID-19. So please don't be panic that if you have the similar symptoms of common colds, so don't think that you will have a COVID-19. So please be patient and but one advice is be separate from the your family members or friends so that in case if you happen to have a COVID positive, then you can contain them in a within your home or within a closed surface. So similarly, compared to flu and COVID-19, the super spreading nature is one of the biggest issue, and the incubation time and the hospital rate is too high in case of COVID-19, as well as the case fatality rate is keep going high now. And this table just give you the say for example, as I said, if some of you are in the home and if you have some symptoms, please give the scores, and based on the scores you can assume that you having the COVID-19 infection or not. Say, for example, you can give a points to cough, cold, diarrhea, 1 points each. And then if you have a difficulty in breathing, you can give 2 points, or fatigue 2 points. And having a history of travel to other countries, then you can give the points, and then maybe you can go to the hospitals and check for COVID-19 and whether you have infection or not. And this chart mainly to show that how as a difference in the age population, so it mainly affects the elderly population where the fatality rate is high because of the other comorbid conditions like asthma, diabetes, heart conditions, COPD, etc. You can name many stuffs like that. So it's one good thing is it is not affecting and even if it is affecting it causing less damage to the kids, especially because so there are a lot of mechanism hypothesis. They are vaccinated, their immune system is very strong. That is one good factor, because as you age the immune system goes down, and that's why they cannot able to counteract with your foreign bodies. So and other factor is the asymptomatic carriers. Now you might have seen that 98% of population in Chennai as well as in Tamil Nadu are asymptomatic. So which means that they are harboring the coronavirus but not showing any symptoms, which means that they are under in control. They don't have any fever, nothing. So they tend to spread more to the people. And at the same time, the other way around, if you look at it, it's a good thing, because it alarming that we are getting into the kind of herd immunity. It's called community immunity. I will show in some of the slides. So one good example is typhoid Mary. Many of you may aware that she spread it without knowing. She's a carrier of salmonella. She spread it to many people. So similarly, maybe if somebody is asymptomatic carrier, you may not able to diagnose them until unless you have some source that they have a contact with somebody. So then you can diagnose them. Otherwise, you will not able to diagnose them, and then they can keep spreading. So even thermal scanners cannot able to detect them because they will not show any fever or something. And moving on to the diagnosis part of it, this is very essential because you need to diagnose precisely, because to isolate them, quarantine them. Germany and Korea has done a wonderful job in that, because they contained very good manner, because they have screened a large population. But India is also doing a great job moving ahead with a lot of screenings, increasing the screening numbers as per the days. So the diagnosis mainly by a real-time PCR. So how that is done is they collect the swabs from the nasal as well as the oral cavity from a posterior pharyngeal wall as well as an anterior pharyngeal wall, and then RNA is extracted, and then it is reverse transcribed by using reverse transcriptase enzyme, and then by using a specific probes specific to spike protein or RDRP, that is RNA dependent RNA polymerase, or E gene, something like that. So it varies between the company. Say for example, there are many companies: LabGan, SD Biosensor, NIV gave some kits. So there are many things. It varies, but basically they targets the viral genome, as well as there are some internal controls which targets the human just to cross check whether your RNA is extracted properly. So after some point of time, you will know with the curve that this the down shows the positive with the red color, curve shows that there's a positive in that patient, and there's a negative. So there is a algorithm for this to say how to say a patient is positive and how to say a patient is negative. You have to check all the QCs before giving the results. I'm not going to deep into it because it's a very big one. So maybe I'm giving a talk on that on Monday in a Crescent College. If some of you may be interested, you can. For that, it is exclusive only on real-time PCR for SARS coronavirus 2. And antibody screening, this is a rapid screening, and you might have aware that India bought a lot of rapid kits and which are not effective. That's true because these rapid kits are really sensitivity issues there because how far it can detect, because mainly these are not for diagnosis. One should understand that it is not for diagnosis and it's mainly for surveillance purposes. That is, how many of them in a population is got infected. For that it can be used. At the same time, one should be aware that the IgM and IgG are produced at certain times. Say for example, IgM can be IgM is the first antibody which is produced. They can take from 7 to 9 days from the infected date, and then they can start. At the day of 39 they can diminish. So if you try to detect this before that or after that, you will not be able to detect it, and then there may be a chance of false negativity. At the same time, IgG starts after 14 days, and then they'll be keep remain in the blood system. So there are some standardization and improvement needed for the prevalence study as such. So this table just so this table as such shows that how can interpret a disease. Say for example, if a patient is qPCR positive, IgM and IgG negative, which clearly indicate that the patient is in early stage of infection because they not yet produced IgG antibodies. If IgM is produced after real-time PCR test positive, then the patient is the early stage of infection. If all them are positive, which means that it is active phase, slowly IgM will go off, and as well as qPCR will go off. Only IgM will stay back. So by these uh, 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 tests, we can understand at what stage the patient is. And moving on to the current treatment, just to give you some overview about the current treatment, there are current lot of current treatments proposed, but if you look at the effectiveness, we are still yet to know that because there's not like so far effective drugs as such for SARS-CoV-2. There are many research going on. The one which is like hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine is started, but it seems to be not well good uh, uh, because of a lot of side effects. And then taclizumab, which is a monoclonal antibody which binds to the IL-6 just to prevent the cytokine storm. And this is also given to the patients like autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis. So they generally block the IL-6, as well as remdesivir, which seems to be a little promising nowadays because there are a lot of trials going on, which mainly it's an analog of nucleotide, which mainly incorporate into the viral genome during replication, and then they block the viral replication. So like that, there are lopinavir and favipiravir from Japan, and there are a lot of drugs, but still we not yet conclusively got some drugs which can be effectively used against coronavirus. That's what I want to say. And there are different vaccine trial going on throughout the vaccine. A vaccine is generally a inert viruses or a protein which injected into the human before infection, and then they can go and sensitize your antigen presenting cells and B cells and T cells. Finally they produce memory cells called plasma cell, and then there will be a specific clone against these viruses. And here I want to mention a very important point is that there are different kind of vaccines, totally 8. One is on the live viruses which is attenuated, and the viruses which carries the essential spike proteins, and nucleic acids without liposomes, and then viral vectors which carries the essential gene for coding the spike proteins, and then only spike proteins, and a empty virus like particles. So there are many viruses candidates going throughout the world, but we are yet to receive a very good vaccine candidate. And Serum Institute doing a good, wonderful job there, and they will be soon coming up with vaccines in either October or September. So how this vaccine to market takes is it's a very quite long period. Usually takes 10 to 15 years. First, you need a preclinical trial in animals. How good it works is, and you have to choose a very good adjuvant for it. And phase 1 trials in a small population, and phase 2 trial in a little larger population. Again, phase 3 in a very big population, and then you can go to a massive vaccination throughout the world. But one quite interesting factor here is that so throughout the world, scientists and many people have worked very fast, and within few months, they have made a very good vaccine candidates which are already in pipeline for clinical trial, and soon we may be hit a very good vaccine candidate for us. And how so if you talk about vaccine, how it will help us, if you ask me, so if you are not immunized, it's easy to spread to all people. If you are immunized, if you look at the yellow color people who are already immunized, so when the virus spread to these immunized people, they will not no more transmit to the susceptible host. That's how the immunization helped the community. And something called herd immunity, which I said earlier. What do you mean by herd immunity is that when the whole community is already infected or already vaccinated, so there will be less likely that transmission will happen between the individuals. So that is the herd immunity or community immunity. This has been well tried by the Sweden recently. So they said we want to develop the herd immunity, as well as UK said the same. So they want to develop herd immunity. So they let the people, they didn't quarantine. The lockdown was released. So they want to try a herd immunity in the community. And the last, like how to treat the patients from convalescent plasma. So just to give you an idea what is convalescent plasma is that when a patient is recovered from the coronavirus after a few days, say for example 30 days or 40 days, they will because that is the time required for the complete elimination of the viruses, and they take the blood from these infected individuals and take the antibody from them, and then they inject them to a already seriously ill patient, as well as a prophylaxis you can be taken. Prophylaxis can prevent from the viral infection, but therapy can really reduce the viral load and other stuffs. So, but here some of the main problems are like it is very tedious process to do that, and there are a lot of side effects. You have to do a lot of screening, so they don't know whether they have any other viral infections, or all the viruses of coronaviruses are gone, because if he carries some other strain, then he maybe tend to super infect the individual who's getting plasma therapy. That is a big problem again here. So a lot of screenings are needed actually, and it should be done with the very sophisticated instruments and other things. So convalescent plasma, yes, it seems to be working good, but not a lot of studies due to the lot of limiting factors. Compared to vaccine, this will be a less limiting one. So if you ask me how quarantine can help us to getting infected, I have a small video. So if you want to flatten the curve, I will show some of the 4 cases. If you think that there is no quarantine or lockdown, so the red colors are people who get infected already. They keep moving and they tend to infect the blue colors. The pink colors are slowly recovering. So you see the top, there is a curve drastically going up, the red color curve, which means that many people in the population get infected and slowly they recover. So there will be a huge damage to the population because many of them may die. So this is the first case. If you leave all of them are free, and then the second case is if you attempt to quarantine. So what happens is if you feel that only one area is affected, so they tend to get infected, and if some of them from that area move to other areas which is well quarantined, then they may tend to affect them. But now if you look at the strategy of quarantine, the curve is not that drastically increased, so it has a two ups. So along with the quarantine, if you maintain the moderate distancing, what happens is you keep distancing, like as a government and a WHO ICMR says, there's a less chance of getting infected from the individual who already carries the infection. So in that case, the curve will be a little slopey manner, so that you will not infecting many people. And so if you keep the last case extensive distancing, so the cases will be still much flatter because you keep the hygienic procedures as suggested by the authorities. So the people slowly get infected, and the curve will be still flatter and flatter. So that's how the quarantine help us to get rid of these coronaviruses. I'm not saying that quarantine will help us completely remove out of the coronaviruses, but still it can reduce the risk of losing many peoples. I'm sure the coronavirus can stay longer back, and then they sometimes even become a seasonal flu kind of things, right? Or it may be end as SARS or MERS. So this is the effect. If you remove the lockdown, the curve goes up, and if you give intermittent lockdown, there will be a slight up and down. And if you keep the complete lockdown, the curve completely close and flat. That's the lockdown effect. So if you ask me when it will become a control, so once people, all of them are get immunized or already got infected, then it will come to an end. So that is the, as of today, the case. Otherwise, it will never be an end story. So it will keep spreading and spreading until the virus is alive. So the one good thing would be vaccine as well as the any good drug targets. So far I told you about the general interesting facts. I mean about the coronaviruses. Now there are a lot of myths and circulating on COVID-19. So I just wanted to go quickly on those things. So when you while sneezing and coughing, you tend to spread the viruses on your hands. And when you with the infected hands, when you try to touch your mobile money or some of the ATMs or like even the some bus handles or lift, so there is a chance that other people come in touch with them, they can get infected. That's why we say please wash your hands. And generally, if somebody sneeze, if you are near, you are wearing a mask. If your skin gets these air droplets, don't worry because our skin physical barrier, they will never allow the droplets go inside, and you can just wipe up with soap and other things. So basically, your mucous membrane should not be exposed. That is, your mouth, nose, or your corneal membrane should not be exposed. That's why they can easily get the viruses in and get infected. And there are some studies which proves that they can be stable on some of the materials for a few hours. You can look at this like how long they can be in air, 3 hours. In some of the bottles they can 2 to 3 days. In copper, 4 hours. In wood and metal it can be 4 to 5 days. So that's why you need to keep hand washing. And when you sneeze, don't use your hands and use your elbow. And these factors varies on temperature, humidity, surface condition, and viral load as well as. And if you ask me when you should wash your hands, there are things before you doing these stuffs. You need to wash your hands. When you see somebody who is already infected, please wash your hands. When you sneeze or cough, please wash your hands before cooking, before eating, and before like after touching your pets. You can need to wash your hands and get rid of the viruses. And this is very important because somebody who always tend to put lot of hand rubs and sanitizers. And this is a one incident. A lady who washed continuously and went near to the uh, for cooking, and then suddenly she catch fire, and then her skin got burned. So please make sure that when you are having these hand rubs, they are already having ethanol or propanol into it. They are highly flammable. So please make sure that once you have this, you keep it for some time so that they will evaporate, and then you can do a walk, something like that. So don't go near to the flame. And this is one important thing because in Italy they found that there are some factors which made them to get more infection rate, because they in Europe generally they have a tendency to walk inside the home without with the same shoe where they were wearing out when they went outside. So there are some protocol. If you follow for this, you can avoid getting infected by coronavirus. When you enter the home, please remove your shoes, and if there is any footpath of your pets, please sanitize them, remove your clothes, and get bath. And then if you have some bags or something which you took outside, keep it in a box at the outside of your home or like near to your doors, and then wash your hands and wash your mobiles and goggles or whatever it is. And then if you are wearing a gloves, and please remove them before entering the room. And don't touch anything without washing your hands when you come out of the when you come from outside. So I just quickly end up with some of the myths and facts. There are many people believe that the coronavirus can spread from pets, but it's not so. There is no cases proven that it's spreading from pets. There are few cases, 3 to 4 cases in the world which is shows that from human it has spread to pets, but not the other way around. So generally, if you're having a pets in your home, please wash your hands before doing anything, and please limit them into your living area. And if you ask me whether the house flies can transmit coronavirus, there are no study evidence to prove that it can cause. But as a scientist, I can say that some of the current coronaviruses in some patients, like 10% of the population, they cause diarrhea. So in Australia, recently they proved that even some of the water contained COVID-19 because of the contamination through the fecal matters. So if some of these houseflies can sit on the fecal matters, then they can have a chance of transmitting the viruses. But as of now, there is no study to prove that it can by the flies. So if you ask me, like there is a myth that hot and humid climates can thing, but even I was believing that in previously, but now it is proves that none of the weather conditions are limiting. Maybe they have a minor effect, not the full effect on the climate. Usually, other viruses has a climate effect, but these viruses are behaving little different. That's why some of the entomologists says that these viruses, when they evolve in bats, these bats are keeping them in a body temperature high when they travel from one place to other place to avoid them getting infected. So that may be the reason for these viruses to withstand the little higher temperature even. So if you ask me, if some of the vaccines like pneumovac or Haemophilus influenza vaccine can prevent them, not absolutely, because they are like bacterial vaccines which have nothing to do with the novel coronaviruses. As of now, there is no vaccine, proven vaccine for novel coronavirus. Yes. So there is a saying that BCG vaccine can cure COVID-19, but as of now, there is no proven mechanism. The main thing is the BCG vaccine gives you the a kind of cross protectivity by mechanism of trained immunity, trained innate immunity. So this is Bacillus galmatic-guerin. So one interesting factor they have found out is that the areas where the BCG vaccine is mandate, that the load of COVID-19 is less compared to the non-vaccinated countries. So that's how the hypothesis that BCG could be the good candidate for contracting the coronaviruses. And if you ask me, like if I take hot bath, the viruses will go. Definitely not, because irrespective of your cold or hot condition, your body keeps them at 37 degrees Celsius, which is not going to change. So ultimately, if you take hot bath, they're not going to do anything much difference. So as of now, there is no preventive medicine for coronaviruses. There are medicines are given, but not yet proven very effective medicines so far till date. Somebody have an opinion that if some of my, like I receive a package from China or some other Korea or Thailand, I have a chance of getting infected. No, because the virus lifetime is very less, because once they move out of the human body, they'll keep rapidly degrading. So there's a time period. So definitely not. So as an Indian, if you ask me, like garlic, if I eat garlic, the coronavirus will die. Definitely, it is not proven, because yes, garlic has antimicrobial property. We need to prove them whether they are killing the coronaviruses or not. So this is again, it's not a proven mechanism, but people are like taking the garlic. But too much of garlic, again, it's not good. Too much of anything is not good. So in that matter, this also goes well with that. And many people, like now you might have seen many youngs are like roaming around the thing, because imagining that only it can affect the older people. But in scenario in Chennai as well as in India, many young populations are affected. This is directly well correlated with the younger population generation in India as well. But still, there is no thing is that it can affect only older people. It can affect any. There is no partiality for this course coronaviruses between the individuals. They can affect any age group, but the most vulnerable ones are older people, because of the other comorbid conditions like asthma, diabetes, and heart disease, and so on. Definitely, mosquito not transmitting the coronaviruses. Why? Because it can be transmitted only through the droplets, and the mosquito can transmit other viruses like dengue, chikungunya, because they are the viruses which can be transmitted by the mosquito. Yes, if you ask me, like credit cards or ATMs or coins and rupees can definitely transmit, but not in a higher rate, a lower rate. So that's why when you go out and when you handle these things, please wash your hands, right? So there are some myth that hand dryers can kill coronavirus. Definitely not, because the heat coming out of the hand dryer is not effective, and also you are keeping for a short while. So that time is not sufficient for you to get rid of the coronaviruses. Definitely, you need to hand wash or alcohol rub is essential. Again, the same way, the cold weather has nothing to do with killing of coronaviruses. I would say much more they will favor the stability of the viruses, like how fridge can store for longer time. And there are some myth that crackers and smokes can, if you inhale, they can kill the coronaviruses. Absolutely not. They may harm your body. And also, there are many myths going around the world that if you eat some non-veg or meats or something, you may get coronaviruses. This is absolutely wrong. You can eat anything, but you need to cook them properly before you're eating, right? That is what essential is. And to clean your houses, you can use any detergents until unless they are very good. And the best one is bleach. And so WHO recommended sodium hypochlorite, ethanol, and so many things. So like that, any detergent can be used, because detergents are generally very effective against viruses. Yes, definitely. You need to wash your clothes, beds. If some of you get infected, you need to wash them very cleverly, and with a high. Even if you can use by hot water or something like that, so the virus will be killed completely. This is really strange. Some of them feel that even I saw some of the videos that even Trump said that if you drink these things, you can really kill the coronavirus. But don't try that, because it can really harm your body, because these are meant to use for inanimate object, not for the our live cells, right? This only for the surface. Again, alcohol is nothing to do with. So many people think that alcohol contain ethanol, so that it can, when it goes into your body, it can kill, but absolutely not. It may harm your body, as well as it may tend to put you more risk in the coronavirus. Again, same like if some of the objects you're buying from China and other part of countries, generally you will not get it, but it depends on the object, which object it is, and how long the virus can stable on them. This is again, many people think that antibiotics are very effective against coronaviruses, but absolutely not. These are again meant for bacteria. And one good thing is they can be advisable for to avoid a secondary infections by bacteria when your immune system is down. And continuous cleaning with saline of your nasal, yes, it may help you, but not help in preventing the coronavirus infection. Of course, like any viral infection, if you can drink waters, it will help you to stay healthy. So as the same, like you can drink as much of water to hydrate your body. Yes. If I'm running out of hand sanitizer, what I should do, simply use your home soaps. This will be really good. And so can COVID-19 spread through feces? Yes, not much extent, but there are 10% of the population who has the chance of spreading, I mean, shedding the viruses in the feces. So there might be chances if these feces come in contact with the water source. So this is again an interesting question. Yeah, any patient can get an infection again by a new viruses, or can be reactivated. It is possible, yes. And uh, so if you expose to a hot sun, definitely it will not kill the viruses. Again, the same, it maintains your body at same temperature. And again, this is, I already said, drinking the some of the this I mean agents will really harm your body. And there is again 5G spreads coronavirus. This is absolutely not true. But one good thing is that as we advance to these Gs, I mean 4G, 5Gs, we are generally harming our human population because of these waves which can really affect. You might have seen, many of might have seen that 2.0, like how these birds are getting affected. Similarly, one day we may also get infected. So in terms of coronaviruses, it's nothing to do with. But if you look at the human as such, the future generation may have a serious problem as we advance to these, I mean 5Gs, 4Gs. So there are some says that if you do a breath exercise, you can get rid of it, but it definitely not. So this will not do that even if you do a breathing exercise. And sesame oil can block, but again, it's not a proven mechanism. Ethanol or sodium hypoxychlorite is the best one to do. Again, smoking can will not affect the coronaviruses because smoking will make you more dangerous because your lungs are already weak, so that they can easily cause a infection in them. So, how far the thermal scanners are effective? Yes, thermal scanners are effective as far as they're concerned, but some problem with that is they cannot able to identify the asymptomatic people because they will not have any fever. So when you go to any markets like Wuhan, so please don't touch any of the objects when you come inside home. So please wash them, your hands, and stay safe. And when you talk about the hydroxychloroquine is current drug of choice in many places, but it's not proven very good effective because of a lot of side effects in them. And it's please don't take them as a prophylaxis because of very adverse reactions of hydroxychloroquine. And at the last, coronavirus can be. Many people think that coronavirus can be killed by ultraviolet rays. Definitely yes, but this ultraviolet rays can be used only for some of the objects, inanimate objects can be given for ultraviolet light. But if you expose to ultraviolet, these ultraviolet rays can penetrate your skin, then cause skin cancer and a lot of mutations in humans, so that may lead to a cancer. So absolutely, humans should not expose to UV lamps. So at the end, if you ask me if the virus can spread from a dead individual, so definitely there is a less chance of viruses spread from dead because, as I said, the virus once move out of the live cells, they will be also dead. So once a person is dead, after a few hours, the viruses also will start tend to degrade much faster, and also they will not be breathing something like that, so they will not able to spread them. They'll be completely covered by some of the covers like thing, and they will not shed any blood or fluid, so they're until unless you get transfused by the blood, then you will not get infected. And you can compare them with the covers in balloon, so that it's tightly packed, so even if you tend to press the dead person so much, so the air will not come out, the less likely to chance get infected. And also sodium hypochlorite and other stuffs are sprayed on that area, so the virus is completely killed even if there is a chance of emerging out of it. So our soldiers are fighting at the borders for fighting against the known enemies, saving our world. And these real warriors, like policemen, doctor, nurses, and scientists, laboratory personnel, and the persons who involved in keeping the entire country clean. So these are really fighting them. So we need to support them, and if something happens to them, we need to respect them. And they didn't expect us from the gunshot to respect their thing, and they're not asking for any flaws at the end. So what they need is, as a humanity, we need to respect them, and not only these people, and even some of your neighbors are passed away due to some of these coronaviruses. You need to respect them and need to give a good respect to their the final things. So as the animals, they tend to help each other, even they are like 5 cents ones, so still they are helping each other. So we should behave in a much matured manner. So we should help each others and keep distance and keep safe, and keep food to others also when they are need. So it is mask is better than ventilation, home is better than ICU, because if you feel you want to stay at home, please stay at home. If you want to stay in ICU, please roam around, and the prevention is better than cure. And this is not the mehendi, it's just your hands with a lot of viruses and bacteria. So please wash your hands before entering the house and eating and other stuffs. So at last, don't mess up with nature. I just want to end up with this because we are doing a lot of dangers to the nature, deforestation, and so many stuffs. That is one of the main reason for these viruses emerging from the forest to the population. Thank you so much for listening to the talk. And if you have any questions, I can feel free to answer your questions.
Informative seminar.
Hello.
Question and answer seminar. People having doubts can ask their questions in the chat box. I repeat, people having doubts can ask their questions in the chat box. Thank you.
So, yes. So, if I just I just open the chart. Oh, I couldn't. Okay. So please explain PCR and other method to detect the virus in detail. Somebody else. So as of now, the real-time PCR is the gold standard method we are doing. There are other methods coming in like LAMP PCR, and uh, as of now, the real-time PCR is a really good one. As of now, we don't have any ELISA or other method. The antibody detection method will not really help you in diagnose the coronavirus. It just meant you only for surveillance study. So how mutations occurs within the host? Could you please explain? This is from I don't know what name it is. So okay. So these mutation, as I said, like for example, to simply put it in, when you go out of the home, suddenly raining comes or what happened, you suddenly tend to open your umbrella, right? Because you want to be suitable in the environment, so you open your umbrella. Similarly, these viruses, when you come into the host, there are some immune pressure from the host side to the viruses. So they tend to hide from the immune system. For them, they need to get mutated. So generally, the RNA viruses are more prone to mutated because they don't have any repair mechanism. But the one good thing is that coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, generally coronaviruses are much stable compared to other RNA viruses. The mutations compared to other viruses it's little less, so that is a good alarming one because the vaccine candidate can really work for a pandemic. um, uh, about RT-PCR, so I would Jagadish, I would say there is a my another talk on Monday, 4 o'clock from Crescent College, so you can join on that. I'm explaining detail like only exclusive on real-time PCR method. Again, Jagadish, like RNA extraction, that is also I'm explaining there. There are many kits available, Qiagen, Fevrogen, and from Thermo. So from High Media, there are many kits are available, but the sensitivity varies between the kits, but there are many. Partially focused.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Sir,
I
one
can hear you.
question from the chat box. Yeah. Whether coronavirus differ from India and USA?
So yes, if you look at the coronavirus genome as such, there are some minor variations. So we are doing some research on that. So far, like around 50 whole genome sequence has done in India, and whereas if you compare US, they already 6,000, 7,000 whole genome already done in US. So it's really difficult to compare both India and US as such with the genome. But if with a smaller set of sequences, what we could aim to understand is that there are variations between the US coronaviruses and Indian coronaviruses. Soon we'll be publishing that paper, and apart from the virus as such, the ethnicity also plays a very good role, because our immune system is entirely different when compared to the Europe Western population. So that might be also a reason for that. Also, like why the cases are going up. So that is also one could be the reason, right? So the genetic makeup of the individual is also a main reason.
Okay. The next question
Yes.
from the chat box. People
Yeah.
are getting reinfected with COVID-19. How is it possible?
Mm. Yeah, that's true.
That
That's
is
a
the
good question.
question.
Actually, it is. Yeah, it is really possible, because so far there are few cases which have shown a reinfection, and yesterday there was one paper which says that these reinfection, how you can determine the reinfection is that when you test the same patient again, they'll show positive. So there are two criteria. One is if they are really showing symptoms again, which means that they are infected by the same virus which already they got it, or it might be a new strain coming from the community again. So there's a two chances. The first chances, the virus can go latency within the human, and then they can reactivate and come back, like how the varicella zoster undergo latency in trigeminal nerve. Like that they may also can go. We are not like clear about it, but the other chances could be by infection of different strain, the same individual, right? And the recent study shows that they are detecting a genetic material, so that genetic material can stay for some time in a body. So that might be merely because of the genetic factors you are detecting, not the real live viruses also. So there are many factors. So, for your question, yes, the reinfection is possible. Reinfection is possible by different strain, because they're getting mutated, so that the reinfection is possible.
Okay, sir. So the next question from the
Yes,
chat
ma'am.
box. Why the newborn is negative and the mother is positive?
Again, that's a good question. So the studies are going on. So sometimes these viruses may not able to cross the placenta, right? These are able to. Usually viruses can cross the placenta, but we are not sure why it's not crossing, or maybe the because we are not having so many cases so far. So this could be like the mother would have got an infection very recently, so the virus is not from the respiratory tract, not entering to the bloodstream, right? So there may be localized infection in the throat and lungs, or not even the lungs, only the throat. So they are not penetrating into the bloodstream. They are not viremia. So once it goes to the viremia stage, they can really cross the placenta. So there are multi factors. They can be like not transferred to the bloodstream, or it might be that the virus is not able to cross the placenta also. So it could be many factors. So mainly because of the mother immune system plays a major role in that.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. The next question is, asymptomatic individual shows positive RT-PCR result, whether they need a treatment. That is the asymptomatic.
Again, a good question. Y- Yeah, I understood,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that.
So, yeah. So asymptomatics are generally. So when you talk about the stages, there are three stages: asymptomatic, pre-symptomatic, and symptomatic stages. A person can anytime can shift from asymptomatic stage to pre-symptomatic and symptomatic stages. So when how these asymptomatic cases are traced is that if you see clearly, if somebody is infected in a nearby area, they'll trace the entire people who came in contact with them. That's how they trace the asymptomatic. They completely throughout the course they'll be asymptomatic. They definitely not need any treatment as such now, because if they are until unless they are asymptomatic, their immune system will take care. If the situation is going worse, then they need a treatment. Otherwise, it will be a self-limiting one, like other viruses. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
sir. Okay. Then the next question is whether the virus spread through particular blood group. Whether the virus
Yes.
spread through.
Okay. Yeah. So this is like there was a few studies from China says that it's more to A blood group, something like that. So as of now, I'm not sure that is it any specific trophism towards a specific blood group. It's not yet clear, but as such, there are a few studies which not yet clearly shown, but they have shown majority of them are in fact A group, and also male population are more affected. So this might be really some kind of coincidence also, but we're not sure. We need to do a lot of research on that and then prove that there are specific association of these viruses towards the specific blood group, because blood group as such, if you consider these are like basically a carbohydrates on the surface of RBC, right? So there might be some reason for the viruses as some specific attachments to these carbohydrates on the surface of A group, or some specific trophism towards the RBC. That could be that could be really a thing, but we need to do a research and prove that there's a specific trophism towards some blood group.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
So I think we'll end up with only very few questions because the time is
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Whether herd
Yeah.
immunity will help to eradicate coronavirus from society.
Herd immunity, yes. If you ask me, that's what we India did with the polio viruses as well as the other pox viruses. Definitely, polio is the best example for that. So we already immunized the entire population. So even if some of the child is not immunized, for that matter, the polio cannot come into contact with the unimmunized children. So in that case, herd immunity will definitely help them to eradicate from the world as well as from India. So India's best example, and polio is the best example for that.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
So the last question. So
Mm.
can Indian medicine control and protect us?
Okay. So we did some study recently with collaboration with MGR Medical University, and it even came in some of the papers. So what we did is we took some of the Indian medicines, like a traditional Indian medicine from Siddha and other medicines, and we did some molecular studies on that, and we had to start the in vitro testers against the viruses. There seems to be some of them are really effective. The best example would be like plasma. The best example is dengue, the papaya leaf extracts, and now some of the companies really identify the compounds from papaya leaf, which is effectively used against dengue viruses. Similarly, ICGB in Delhi have recently found some drugs against dengue. They seems to be promising, which is from a plant extract again, and that is again they are planning to use again coronaviruses, because both of them are RNA viruses. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
If you
So
have any other
okay.
interesting question, you can ask.
Uh,
Somebody,
so
thank
we
you for
have asked a
explaining.
question. There is a multi-organ failure in COVID
Mhm.
patients. Is that true?
Yes. Because if you see, the main multi-organ failure reason is once your lung is gone, collapsed, there is no oxygen supply, and there's a lot of cytokine storms which majorly damage your organs. So then it leads to the dysfunction of the all the vital organs, that leads to the multi-organ failure. Yes, not in all cases. Those who are like very sick and with other comorbid conditions.
Okay. One
Definitely
more,
yes. So some,
yeah, one more
yeah.
interesting question. Some rumors say
Yes.
that China spread this. That is, China has spread this virus. Is it true?
Okay. I thought somebody will ask this, definitely. Okay. So yes, there are many rumors. As a scientist, if you ask me, what I would say is there is no solid evidence as of now this coronavirus is intentionally spread by Chinese. Because if you look, if you want to trace that, you need to analyze the sequences. As of now, there is no clue from the sequences that it is a man-made, right? Even if it is man-made, it is very, very difficult to prove by the sequence analysis. If somebody has made it cleverly, they might have made with some of the genomic factors which you are not able to trace it, because we know how to trace that, because it's very difficult to trace if you man-made. But I feel personally that it might not be man-made. It might be something like that accidentally. Something got released from the lab, Wuhan labs. Could be, but I'm not sure. It might be that, or the 90% chance is that it's going to be a nature evolution of the viruses, because these animals are more known to harbor these viruses. It's merely basically a natural evolution of these viruses, because if you see the history of it, every 10 years or 15 years, there is a evolution of these viruses. So people come in contact with these viruses, and most of them are like originating from China, because they are like eating a lot of these animals. That's the main reason, I could say. So definitely
Okay, sir.
not. So if it is my personal point of view that it might not be man-made. See, to prove that, until unless Chinese governments open their mouth, or somebody who involved in the study open their mouth, otherwise it is very, very, very difficult to prove that it is a man-made. But as of now, these sequences and other research shows that it is not kind of man-made.
Okay, sir. Hope this will be the
Yes, ma'am.
final question. I saw
Yeah.
people sterilize the room with robotic UV illumination in quarantined area.
Mm.
Won't it
Mm.
mutate the virus?
That's a good question. Yes, but the thing is, like when usually UV tend to mutate the DNA. That's how they make them unstable. So when we give the UV light, we give it for some time. It's not that we just give for a few minutes and then remove the UV. So the time we expose, that is matter. The time and the UV strength. There's a wavelength, right? 312 or 332 something. So you need to give that specific wavelength which is harmful to the viruses, and also the effective time you need to give, so that the viruses will be completely damaged, so that the major mutation happen, or major damage to the RNA. So the RNAs are highly unstable, so they can quickly degrade themselves. So there will not be a chance for mutation, because the time exposure is the main key point in the eradication of the viruses by using UV.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more question finally. Why
Yeah.
the death rate? Why the death rate is more in developing countries like USA, Spain than in India?
Yeah, that's the same. That what I said is it's because of ethnicity. Because if you look at the many genetic factors like HLA and human leukocyte antigen factors, and there are many genetic factors. Even there is a study which says that there is a difference in the ACE2 receptor amino acids between the Asian population and European population. So that might be the reason. Like maybe so these all are like in the beginning stage of research. So the possible reason could be mainly because of their ethnicity, their lifestyle, as well as the amino acids on the ACE2 receptor, which are much more affinity for the viruses when compared to the Asian population. And also, many of us are like, I would say that we are normally exposed to many of these viruses. Africans and Asians are generally not that much hygienic, I would say, so that we tend to expose to more of these viruses. That gives some kind of natural immunity to these viruses also. So there are many factors as such. So environmental factors, genetic factors, host factors, so many factors involved in that. That's why the spread is more in Western population compared to the Asian population. The best example I would say is pox, chicken pox. When a British ruled our country, when chicken pox is there, they will die immediately. But Indian population will resist the virus. That is the best example for that. So they are more vulnerable to these viruses.
Okay,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
So, my dear friends, since the time is running up, I hope we'll end up with a final question. What is your take on autopsy reports from Italy? which says this is more of microembolism than pneumonia, which may be secondary.
Yeah, that's true because there are many autopsy reports, postmortem reports coming out from many countries like China and Italy and UK and so on. They are saying that there are microemboli formation in many areas which are mainly doing the damage. So as of now, we are not clear why this microemboli is formed because there are some studies from China says that these viruses are quenching the hemoglobin, the beta chain of hemoglobin. That's how they blocks that, and the hemoglobin count goes up, and then there's a microthrombi formation. But the mechanism, that's what I said, like the mechanism, it's not clearly understood. This is a sudden pandemic, nobody is not prepared for it. So scientists and doctors, physicians are working throughout the world to understand the real pathomechanism of these viruses as such. Yes, there are few cases which is clearly showing that microembolism. So the microembolisms also could be because of the treatment also. Some of the drugs can also induce microembolism. For example, hydroxychloroquine. So there are some cases where they can form these kind of side effects. So we are not yet to clear that it is because of the viruses or because of the host behavioral mechanism or by the immune mechanism or the drug. So that we need to clearly elucidate it. We need some time to clearly prove the pathomechanism of it, and mainly for that they are now started with some of the anti-clotting factors they are giving as a supportive therapy when the patients comes out with. So that could be the reason also. So I could see one interesting question, that can we able to treat the coronavirus with monoclonal antibodies? Of course, yes. Somebody called Bhagavati asked. So of course, yes, monoclonal antibody can neutralize the viruses. That's how the vaccine works. Once the vaccine goes inside, they produce a monoclonal antibody within our immune body. So they will go and block these spike proteins, and then they will inhibit the binding to the receptors. That's how we get immunized to the viruses. I hope I have
Yeah,
answered some of your questions to
yeah.
expected level.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. The talk was very informative, and hope we
Thank
will
you so
wind up
much.
the session with a formal vote of thanks. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all for
And
listening
I
the
thought,
talk. Thank you
and
so much.
yeah, I thank all the faculty participants who have participated. Hope everyone have benefited, and very good comments have been seen in the chat box. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you so much, and thank you for Asan Memorial College for inviting me to give this talk on coronavirus. I hope this has given some informatives to all who are like wanted to aware of about coronavirus. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Respected Principal, Dr. Ramanathan, management, invited speaker, staff of various colleges and ASAN institution, and dear students, my privilege to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks on this webinar. I, on behalf of ASAN Memorial College of Arts and Science, Department of Biochemistry, would like to extend my hearty thanks to the speaker, Dr. Naveen Kumar, for making this webinar very effective and informative on myths and facts of novel coronavirus COVID-19. With deep sense of gratitude, I thank all the participants for the valuable presence and patience in making this webinar a meaningful one. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
thank you, ma'am. I leave the meeting.
Yeah, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Okay,
much.
okay, sir. Okay, sir.